the new world heavyweight champion. No doubt about it. The dream has come true.
On May 6, 1984 at Texas Stadium, Kerry Von Erich pinned Ric Flair to become the NWA World's Heavyweight Champion. And yes, he did it with a backslide. I don't know why that's become such a bone of contention for some people almost 40 years later, but that's how he did it. The match didn't need a flashy finish to get what they call over in pro wrestling. That match, held at the David Von Erich Memorial Parade of Champions, was over weeks before the ring was set up. Kerry Von Erich completed the family dream at 24 years old, about 2 months younger than the person recognized by the WWE as the youngest ever champion. The NWA World title was undeniably the most prestigious championship in pro wrestling at the time, and Kerry's father Fritz had hoped all of his sons would get a turn holding the belt. Kerry's brother David was set to win the championship from Flair, but after his death in February 1984, the NWA paid tribute to him with Kerry's 18-day run as world champion. We'll take a quick look at all 13 matches in Kerry's short title reign as he defended the championship in Texas, Florida, and Japan. This won't be too in-depth as there is very little video of Kerry's title defenses and not even that many pictures. Unless you happen to be there to see a lot of these matches, it's hard to determine how the matches played out other than the end results. Kerry's first match as world champion came about 30 miles from Texas Stadium. Kerry defended the NWA World title against a familiar opponent in Freebird Terry Gordy. The Von Erich Freebird feud was still in full swing, and there was little fans loved seeing more than Kerry making his first defense against the biggest Freebird. The match was the physical affair you would expect from a Von Erich versus Freebird match, with Gordy once getting a near pin the same way Kerry won the title, with a backslide. Kerry pinned Gordy in just over 16 minutes for his first successful title defense. Kerry defended against Gordy again at an event in Muskogee, Oklahoma on May 8th, and again pinned the Freebird for his second successful defense. Trying to cover as much world-class ground as they could in a short amount of time, Kerry then headed to South Texas and Corpus Christi for a return defense against Ric Flair on May the 9th. Many sources list the May 11th match at the Sportatorium in Dallas as being a title defense, but that was a non-title match, which Kerry also won. I don't know the reason why it was a non-title match, but an assumption can be made Flair didn't want to lose to Von Erich in televised world title matches twice in the same week. The Von Erichs likely wanted the match in the Sportatorium, which was essentially their home base, so a non-title match was something of a compromise. Kerry made one last title defense in Texas on May 12, 1984 in San Antonio, again defeating Ric Flair to retain the championship. Flair would then take one of the few breaks he had during that time, taking the next 10 days off before heading to Japan. The next day, Kerry was in Florida for another series of defenses. On May 13th, during a daytime card in Ocala, Florida, Kerry took on Mike Rotundo, who was one of the top challengers for the Florida Heavyweight Championship at the time. In what was sure to have been a great technical match, Von Erich and Rotundo wrestled to a 60-minute time limit draw. A few years ago, I actually talked to someone that says they were at this match, and according to this person, Kerry used some shortcuts a couple of times in the match. And if true, apparently Kerry was playing the part of the heel against the local babyface. The same person said he got the chance to speak to Kerry briefly and asked if this meant he was a bad guy now, still well within the years of kayfabe when everything in wrestling was presented as a real sport. Kerry said he was just doing what he had to do to keep the belt. I don't know if any of that is true. It was just some random person on the internet, and nobody on the internet makes things up, right? That night, Kerry took on former WWF champion superstar Billy Graham at the Eddie Graham Sports Stadium in Orlando. There are a scant few pictures of Von Erich taking on Graham and no video that I could find. It's a shame, as these two muscular icons facing off should have been better preserved. Von Erich won that first match against Graham, putting his successful defenses at 6. Of all Kerry's defenses in Florida, his matches against Florida heavyweight champion Ron Bass were the most heavily promoted on the Championship Wrestling from Florida TV show. Kerry and Bass had a brief confrontation on TV, with Bass saying they could have the match right then. Kerry said, "Don't let the suit fool you, big boy," standing up to take off his jacket. Bass was then pulled away and led to the back. Kerry and Bass finally did face off for the first time on May 14th in West Palm Beach. Kerry won the match by disqualification. A May 15th defense against Rotundo in Fort Myers was changed to a match against Billy Graham. I couldn't find why there was a change, but it was probably said it was some kind of injury for Rotundo. Kerry won that match and also won by DQ over Graham in a May 16th defense in Miami Beach. Kerry defeated Graham one more time on May 18th in Lake City, Florida, before wrapping up his Florida run at the Sun Dome in Tampa with a DQ win over Bass in just over 16 minutes. Kerry left Florida with 11 successful defenses and headed to Japan. Kerry's final successful defense came on May 22, 1984, as part of All Japan Pro Wrestling's Grand Champion Carnival 2. Kerry faced off against Jumbo Tsuruta, who had lost the AWA World Championship just 8 days earlier to Rick Martel. This was a best 2 of 3 falls match in Tokyo, and you can find the full match here on YouTube. If you've never watched any 80s wrestling from Japan, it's pretty interesting. The crowd's pretty quiet through most of the matches, but they will erupt when they see something they want to see. At one point in this match, Tsuruta sets up for a double underhook suplex, and the crowd suddenly started making noise. Kerry is not the heel here, as it's 2 baby faces going against each other, but Tsuruta is obviously the crowd favorite, being one of the biggest stars in Japan at the time. Von Erich isn't booed by the crowd and does have a few people cheering for him, but is probably 85 to 90% behind Tsuruta. While neither is the heel, it definitely gets very physical and heated. Tsuruta wins the first fall to put Kerry's back against the wall, and Kerry actually starts bleeding early in the second fall. I couldn't tell for sure, but I think they might have done that the hard way, too. Kerry finally gets Tsuruta down with the iron claw and takes the second fall. The match ends in a draw after both men tumble out of the ring and tussle on the outside, and the third fall ends in a double countout, with Tsuruta sliding back into the ring just a second too late. As they did before the match, the two shake hands after, and Tsuruta raises Von Erich's hand in victory. Finally, May 24, 1984, in Yokosuka, Japan, Kerry defended the title against Ric Flair. Again, this match can be found on YouTube, but it is somewhat edited as the actual winning pinfall is cut out. I suspect because there was a 5 or 6 second clip from that match that was shown on World Championship Wrestling back around 1986, and that's now owned by WWE. This is another best 2 of 3 falls match and is a pretty standard Kerry versus Flair match, but with more holds and a little less Flair shtick. There is once Flair does a woo and gets a woo back from some of the Japanese crowd. I thought that was kind of funny. They also keep showing a woman in the crowd that I think was Flair's wife at the time, and the mother of Charlotte Flair. If you speak Japanese, determining these things would be a lot easier. The match starts out pretty slow, as most 2 of 3 fall matches do. Kerry applies the iron claw and pins Flair for the first fall. Something I did not expect was how the second fall ends. Flair puts Kerry in the figure 4 leg lock, and Kerry actually submits to the figure 4. Other than some enhancement talent on Georgia Championship Wrestling back in the day, I don't think I've seen Flair win anything with the figure 4. But after that second fall, Kerry favored that knee a bit. Now, even though the match here on YouTube doesn't have the third fall, well, the match I found on YouTube didn't have the third fall. Maybe there is one out there that has it, I don't know. But anyway, I have seen the third fall. As I recall, Kerry got in behind Flair and rolled him up. Flair grabbed a handful of trunks and reversed it, pulled Kerry over and pinned him for the win. Kerry argues with the referee to no avail, telling him Flair pulled his trunks. Kerry looks devastated, which I would imagine is both kayfabe and real. At the beginning of the match, you get the idea Kerry didn't like handing the belt over to the referee because he knew it would be the last time. And that was it. Kerry's 18-day reign came to an end. Flair defended once in Japan the next night against Harley Race before heading to Canada and back to Mid-Atlantic. Kerry was part of a tag match in Japan the next night, tagging with Prince Tonga against Buzz Tyler and Bobby Heenan. Yes, that Bobby Heenan. Then Kerry came home. He did take a little time off, but a week after leaving Japan, he had a rematch against Flair in St. Louis that ended in a 60-minute draw. By June 11th, he was back to a regular schedule in World Class. I don't know if this was by design or if it just happened to come out this way, but Kerry's first opponent once he came back to World Class was the Missing Link at Will Rogers Memorial Auditorium in Fort Worth. Link was David's opponent in his last televised match at Will Rogers in Fort Worth before he left for Japan in February. It's a little sad if you think about it too much. And in preparing to do this video, I probably thought about it too much. The goal was a world title run. That was lined up for David, and there are people almost 40 years later that will say it wasn't a sure thing that David was going to be champion, and we don't know. The way they built up that match between David and Flair and putting it in Texas Stadium at the biggest card of the year, there's no way David wasn't leaving with the belt. David passed away, so the NWA gave Kerry the short reign as tribute to David. You could say it was Fritz's dream to have a Von Erich win a world title, but I think after David died, they all wanted that world title run. After just 18 days, it was over. I could go on, but maybe I'll save that for another day. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. I just wanted to do my part to conserve a small piece of wrestling history, especially after seeing so much out there that isn't accurate. Kerry's reign wasn't a long one, but it still means a lot to world-class fans and to Von Erich fans. If you like this video and would like to see more like it, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Not necessarily in that order. And I will see you next time.